Cumberland School Committee at 5:49 p.m. on Thursday, March 10th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is approval of agenda. Motion by Mrs. Rogalski.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. We have one main topic here tonight. This is a special meeting about the budget. So it's discussion and a vote on fiscal year 2023 superintendent's recommended school budget. We did also have a special meeting last week to go over details, and so this is a follow-up to that meeting for any questions or comments, anything additional to add, and we can choose to vote on it if we're comfortable in this session. It's also on the agenda for the open meeting, or if we feel we need even more time, we can, schedule more time for that too. So, Dr. Thornton, I'll hand it over to you.
Madam Chair, you took my opening away, but we are ready to answer your questions and certainly entertain any thoughts you have and any budget changes and/or amendments. So I would just turn it over to the committee to ask questions of myself, Mr. Pignata, Mr. Damana, Ms. Duncanson, Dr. Santa. We're all here to answer any questions that you may have on the budget.
Okay, Mr. Collins.
Has there been any discussion with the town side? Do we know, it's kind of hard. We're trying to get a budget approved, or approve a budget with so many unknowns. And obviously, there's going to be some back and forth with the town, but have we been given any indication since last week of what we're looking at for town funding?
We're actually seeing the mayor again tomorrow at 1:30, but in our probably 2 or 3 conversations with the mayor, it's been positive, but we have had nothing definitive as far as numbers, but we have clearly expressed all the items that we need to make this work.
I feel like every year it's the same thing, and I think you've had a very realistic budget, Mr. Damana and everybody else. We want all of these things. We have seen wish list. We've seen all these things over the last couple months. But I think you presented something that's realistic. I think it's something tangible. It's not ideal, not even close to ideal, but it's just the stark reality of what we're looking at every year in and year out, especially now coming out of COVID and, kind of our long-term budget forecast. So we have to be fiscally responsible, which is one of our, one of our tenets, if you will. So I appreciate what you've done. You've minimized, I think, reductions in staffing, but at the same time, we need growth right now. We can't be rubbing 2 pennies together like we do every single year. And there's been things we've talked about in this committee up here about increasing busing routes and all these other things. And, and it really comes down to, I see a couple things in our expenses that are things that I think need to be fixed that are out of our control. BVP. We have payment of bills, over $918,000 alone of a $1.4 million bill goes to BVP. Plus, we have all these unfunded state mandates, which we've talked about. People trying to get their name in the paper, passing these laws, but nobody gives us the money to pay for them. So we're stuck with those. Whereas we could be providing more mental health services, we could be adding math coaches, ELA coaches, we could be adding, easing the burden of many of the administrators who are sitting here right now. It's getting ridiculous. So I appreciate what you've done, and thank you, and I thank you for just being realistic and being honest with the committee.
Yes, Mr. DeMonica.
Excuse me, Mr. Superintendent. I know in our budget we have 1.8 as an ask from the town, the 4%, and then we're asking them for another $263,800 for loss of income from ESSER. Has the mayor given any indication about at least given the $263,800?
Like I said, our meeting again tomorrow, we have mentioned these different areas. We have nothing definitive, but we have had several positive conversations on this whole package. So I'm always a glass half full person. I have to think we're going to hopefully fare well, and that's how I have to look at it.
I really don't see that happen, but Madam Chair, when it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion to add a position back to the superintendent's budget until such time that we have to make cuts. If no one else has questions of the superintendent, I didn't want to step on their shoes here.
Fiorello.
Yeah, I think I made my thoughts on this vote tonight very clear last week, that until we know what our numbers are, it's really hard to do anything. The only concern I have going into this budget year, as my concern is every year, aside from my busing issues, is class sizes. And it's something that Dr. Thornton and I have talked about, Mr. DeMond and I have talked about, and that's one of my big concerns is class sizes and how it's affecting achievement in some of our classrooms. So that's just my 2 cents.
Just a thought on class size, Madam Chair, if I could. As you know, we often share a sheet that looks like this with all of you with the elementary school grades and the class sizes, and these truly are a moving target. Give you an example, K enrollment's open, as you know now, and opens, and we just run through the year enrolling folks. At community last year, we had 5 sections, all around 23. But right now, as far as budget forecasting, we have numbers of like 9 and 8 in 5 sections. Will it stay there? Of course not. But we have to kind of keep being nimble and look at, what are the numbers coming in at on or around June 1st, right? And how do we feel about keeping the 5 sections there versus maybe, doing a cut or an add at BF, where typically we get more enrollment over the summer, right? So we have to kind of keep watching those numbers, but we are watching them now. But we're trying to cut it pretty close and take some of these numbers, make them tight, knowing that it can change.
Mr. DeMonica?
Mr. Thornton, what is your projection in regards to enrollment for next year? I looked at our 2012 enrollment when I got elected. I looked at this week's, that was in our folder, and I'm predicting we're going to have well over 5,000 students in the district. Do you have any sense of what that number could be?
Well, right now, year over year, this month, we're about 92 students better than last year. Only a couple districts in Rhode Island are gaining kids. We're one of them, so can't really have one reason why that is. But I would expect that trend to continue, and we'd be gaining more students. I don't have the exact number for you right now, but I can certainly get that, what I think it may be. But the good news there is, for Mr. Pignato's office, is state aid goes the way of student numbers, right? And eventually, the state's going to have to actually enact the funding formula once again. As you all know, it's based on all kinds of variables in this thing called a quadratic. And right now, we're all being held harmless. What that means is Cumberland was going to gain some money anyway in the funding formula, but cities like Providence, if they follow the funding formula now, would lose $20 million. So to answer your question, I'll get back to you as far as what I think it'll go up. I think it will go up to the positive. And it's a good thing to have more customers. And yeah, so that's all I have.
Do we know if the funding formula that we're hoping to get from the state includes the approximately $800,000 that the tax assessor's office had made a mistake that cost us state aid?
We have been asking about that every week, as well as the mayor, and we have been given assurances. We haven't seen the check yet. It's around $744K from this year we're in, and we've been given every assurance we're getting it. We have not received it yet.
In this year's fiscal?
Yes. All in between this year and next year, we're looking at $1.2 million of increased state aid for Cumberland going into next year.
Mrs. Rakowski?
I just have one, I just have one specific question about one singular line item in the agenda. Is that okay to ask? Okay, so in the high school budget, I see that we have the superintendent proposed over class size / loss of prep is $100,000. I know, I see, in 2021 that we hit that. but as of July to December, they're projecting, I think, only $1,600. I don't know if I'm reading this correctly because this is not my strong suit. But I'm just wondering, do we think that we're going to need $100,000 with COVID better with teachers there and hopefully not losing as much prep? Or
Yeah.
are you just assuming that?
The challenge is, right now, it's just a staffing issue in numbers. The high school has around 1,500 kids, and you have, over 400 sections or classes in a semester, and we're scheduled so tightly at the high school, in a lot of cases, kids can come in over the summer, and what was a nice even, every teacher teaches 5, and we have, say, 10 history teachers. Now we need 2 new sections over the summer, around $30,000. So rather than hire a new person for a .4, we can offer 2 teachers another section, and that's where you get that $15,000 roughly per section. So absolutely, we would definitely use that, all those funds, absolutely. This year, if memory serves, we might have had, Ms. Duncan said, 10, 12 overall? 12 overall in the high school for overages, so yes, we would use that.
Any other comments or questions? No. Ms. Smith? Oh, sorry. Mrs. Rogowski?
One more. Looking back at the proposed positions cut and positions added, going back to the high school dean, we talked about the assistant principal, the climate and culture scheduler, and that hopefully that hasn't been able to be filled, so that will just get transferred to the dean. If that, are we still advertising for that position?
Ms. Duncanson, what's the ad status?
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I know Mr. Monica may want to add a position. I would say if we do that, that's fine, but we'll have to do a corresponding balancing piece. So I'd recommend either we have a corresponding cut or put it in fund balance to make sure we're balanced, that's all. If we add something, we have to balance.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. I just have a question. I listened to everything that we discussed at the first budget meeting, and I certainly listened to everyone that spoke from the different areas, and I think Dr. Santa really touched me in just how much she has put into this and how much she has saved and cut and found solutions for, and I understand and really appreciate the fact that we're bleeding for this help, and the pandemic has killed us. I mean, it really, really has hurt this budget. It's hurt us. There's a lot of help that needs to come in. You know, we have the ESSER funds, and that's great, and I know that we have a gap. We're hoping for the 4% to come in for us, and there's a chance that that may not happen. Are we starting to prepare for the worst-case scenario?
I would say, I always think of the next thing, and yes, I always think about being in late May, early June, and what would happen if. Yes, we are thinking of those things.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I would like to, looking at all the position additions and cuts that are on the sheet the superintendent had given us, I would like to add the McCourt academic coach back to the budget. And my thought is because McCourt is hovering on that rating from RIDE at 2, and if we don't turn the tide down at McCourt, and Dr. Masterson and his crew and every teacher in that building has worked their butts off to help us. But back in 2012, when I got elected, we made a choice here on the floor to start bringing in these academic coaches into the school district to help the children move forward. And doing that has moved us forward from the middle of the pack up to the top. And speaking with the assistant superintendent, he'd like to see all of these positions back in, and I'm sure Dr. Sante would like to see the reduction at the high school go away and others, but, you know, if we don't stem the tide down at McCourt and bring in some more academic coaching in there to help between there and North Cumberland, I know it's only one position, but one position can make a difference, you know, in the school year, and I would like to see the school district at least put that back in temporarily into the budget. And, you know, we worry about this come June, when we finally have a number from the school district. I mean, I know the superintendent would like a corresponding number here, you know, position versus the cut, and I'll make the first thought is to add the position and cut the money from BVP. That's my thought. And I know solicitors advised us against doing things like that to BVP, but come June, I may make the motion that we use the whole $4 million that we're giving BVP and apply it to all the children in the Cumberland School District and not just them as well. And, because we can't continue with this cut, make do with what you can get. And RIDE tells us, you pay BVP this amount of money no matter what, no questions, no ask. Well, we do I mentioned it earlier, dog and pony show in front of the town council and the mayor, looking for more money, and BVP doesn't have to do that same dog and pony show. They just sit back and collect the check. So I'd like to see us put that position back in temporarily, and we'll deal with it in June, and so that they can at least make plans for this to help move those children forward. If that becomes a tier 2 school in the state, RIDE eventually will get involved and tell us what we have to do there versus doing something now to do it. And I know Dr. Masterson's in the back, and we got teachers here and staff and everything else. They need more help down there. We've found it in the elementary schools. We found it for the high school. You know, the middle schools need that position as well added back in, and hope for the best, that we can move them forward with additional resources. So I'd make that motion that we take that position out and put it back into the budget at this time.
Okay, so Mr. DeMonica has made a motion to add the McCourt academic coach back into the budget and then approve the budget.
Well, we're not going to,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we're going to approve sending a budget to the council eventually, you know, not due till the first Monday in April. You know, the budget that we're hoping to get from the town, and then come June, once the town adopts their budget, then we're going to have to do a reconciliation somewhere along the line, and go from there. But, you know, let's remember, we didn't lay off staff this year. Normally, what we've done in the past, anyone that wasn't tenured, we laid them off. We gave them the notice, and we've lost a lot of good teachers because they got notified, you're out, and because we don't know where the money stands. If the town doesn't adopt a budget before June 1st, we're going to be in deep trouble because we have to vote by then, by law, if it's budgetary, to lay off all kinds of people come then. So the town needs to step up their, you know, game plan as well, so we understand where we stand. And then we're going to have to do a reconciliation budget, you know, somewhere right after that, so that we are, you know, in sync with what the town gives us in the state.
Madam Chair, if I could, so to balance, just to clarify, Ms. Pignano, that would be adding 95,528 back to the budget. And to balance it, I think you have to take it out of fund balance is how I would look at that.
And put that in if it fits in. You might put it in now and find out that you're gonna take it out in 3 or 4 weeks because you get 800,000 from the town or something, so.
And-
If not, if you wanna do it now, I would, instead of going to fund balance, which stands out like a sore thumb with rating agencies, et cetera, I would increase the breakage. We used 554 last year, we were trying to bring that number down. Breakage, what basically breakage is everyone's budgeted like they're gonna get paid for every day that they would come to work. Well, that doesn't happen. People leave during the year. There's a time period when a job remains vacant and it takes maybe a month or two to fill it, or someone runs out of sick time. So we budget some type of breakage. Not the best thing to do, but we're forced to do it to balance. So the number's 430 this year that I'm using. It was 554 last year. I would go there before fund balance. Fund balance, the town's going to be going to the rating agencies and all that other type of stuff for the bond issue. The money we're spending now is in bond anticipation notes. The town plans on bonding that money in the next fiscal year. So they will have to go through rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, whoever else rates the town debt, and they will look at use of one-time revenues like that and see that, gee, $1 million, $1.1 million last year, it'd be 8 change again this year. It starts to show some structural weaknesses.
Madam Chair, I would move that we take the, money from the breakage at this time to fund that position.
So we have a motion on the table to add a position back into the budget. So we would need a second for discussion.
Yeah, I'm hearing it as a motion to amend the superintendent's budget as described by Mr. Monica. We need a second, and then vote on the amendment. In order to vote on the amendment, we need a second.
Yes.
I will second for discussion.
Mr. Fiorello, seconds for discussion. I actually have a question for Mr. Damana related to this, because I know that we've talked a lot in achievement about all the different pieces of what we're doing across the district and how we're using some of the SF funding and the MLL coordinator and lots of other things. So I guess I'm curious, Mr. Damana, from your perspective about this particular position and in context of the other things that we're already planning on doing at the middle school level.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. DeMonica was quite accurate in describing the importance of the position and paying close attention to McCourt. They're not official, I just want to clarify, they're not officially a two-star school at all. The RICAS scores, when they come out after this year, we'll see if they're going to start scoring schools the way they have been. Superintendent and I have to fill out a survey regarding this tomorrow and provide feedback to the state on this. And of course, I'm thinking that we would discourage them from doing that another year. I'm not speaking for the superintendent. That would just be my recommendation to him. But as far as the position itself, as I had mentioned during the last budget meeting, our goal was to create a sustainable professional development ecosystem here in Cumberland, and in order to do that, we need coaches in our buildings. And so we started with the buildings that we felt needed the most immediate support. McCourt was one of those schools. They remain one of those schools. And, removing resources from them is in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend it. In addition to that position, there are 2 other MLL jobs, multi-language learner jobs. The area that McCourt's report card took the largest ding was in the MLL category, and that's what brought them to that quote-unquote 2-star status. Dr. Masterson and I have talked about it at length over the past year. But we also know that the way the system is set up, they double ding you, and what that means is that students who are in that subgroup, MLL students, if they are not showing the appropriate growth, it's shown on the report card, obviously, and then that data in their RICAS and ELA and math scores once again go against J School. And so those are the things that we need to address. I know that the current coach there has been working very closely with my L coordinator or MLL coordinator this year. And certainly if Dr. Masterson wants to expand on that, I'll leave that to him. But to answer your question, I'm sorry for the winded answer, but it's complex. But yeah, I would discourage that cut.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Udemata. Ms. Smith?
This question is probably more for Mrs. Coughlin and Dr. Masterson. When you gave your presentation and discussed at the last meeting, you talked about the Essentials Coordinator, which was going to be done by a grant. And I understood that part of that could help cover some of this other role that was cut. I don't know if I understood it correctly. I'm hoping maybe you could give us a little bit more details on what this Essentials Coordinator will do and how that could help us as well.
All right, so I'll start, and then Jay can follow up on that. So we've invested as a district an awful lot of money on the Essentials program, okay? And so the bottom line is the Essentials program provides a tiered support system for middle school students. Prior to any Essentials courses, students would go to their core class without any additional tiered supports. Not a good model. So what our attempt to do with the coaching model and the Essentials positions in particular is hone in on the successful implementation of Essentials and hone in on the pedagogy, making sure that the framework and the instruction are what it needs to be in order for us to make the gains to get out of that hole. And so if we do not have a position like that, it's just about really the intent of making it more focused. So one example is right now at BF Norton and Garvin. We had a more global scope for the coaching position, but we felt the money was better used having it be more focused. So we've made those positions grades 3 to 5 focused on SRSD, which is our writing and comprehension, difficult analytical skills, those types of things. And so we've made that scope much more narrow for the coach so that they're not involved in a lot. We want them to stay in a certain lane and push a certain group forward.
And that is through a grant, correct? That Essentials Coordinator is the grant?
Yeah, so during the last budget meeting, I had said that right now the ESSER 3 grant is balanced. And so if the cut of the coaching position were to go through, we currently do not have a financial means to add that in. However, there are things that happen, like Alex was talking about with breakage. Sometimes our curriculum quotes come in less than what we had allocated in ESSER 3. And so with all of those things, over $5 million, there could be an opportunity for some monies to pay for that position. But, you know, the ESSER money runs out in 2 years. You got 15 jobs that are going to dissolve in 2 years. And that is an extremely dangerous proposition because both principals that are here with us tonight, they've built whole systems around these essential frameworks. And if they were to be ripped out of their schools, it would create, in my opinion, quite chaos.
So if I could just for one moment on that, because that brings up more questions then, because this was under the positions added, and it says afterwards, in parentheses, grant, as it does for the assistant principal, climate and culture scheduler for the high school. So you were saying that we don't have those funds, and that we're going to have to put them into the budget part, or are they grant funds? I don't understand.
So for which position?
The essentials coordinator for the middle school?
All right, so during the last budget session, I had stated a clarification. When the superintendent presented, there was an ESSER tag next to that position, and I had mentioned during that meeting that right now, there is no money in ESSER for that job. And so that coaching position, which is currently not in the superintendent's budget, would dissolve from the actual general budget. What we would attempt to do, if it didn't make the final cut from the school committee, we would attempt to get a coaching position, or that that essentials coordinator position, into the ESSER grant. But currently, right now, it's balanced.
Okay, and I apologize because I had it as something completely different that was removed from ESSER. That's not, to my knowledge, what was explained to us at the last meeting.
Yeah, so I think it's a good clarifying point, because it is listed under positions added, the essentials coordinator from the grant, and the position cut is the academic coach. So
Correct.
are you saying, Mr. D'Amato, that this essentials coordinator position is not funded by the grant, does not exist in this
Correct.
budget?
Correct.
So Mr. DeMonica made a motion to add the academic coach, but we don't have the essentials coordinator in the budget either.
So what we would do is reframe that academic coaching position and have it be more myopic in its focus for essentials. So that's what we would do. We would restructure that job.
I'm a little frustrated. I apologize. Yeah, no, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, the academic coach was the one that said ESSER, and then in the notes it says it was not in there yet, and we weren't sure if we were going to have it. But then the essentials coordinator was on a different part of the budget. That said it was with a grant. And the assistant principal for Cumberland High School for climate and culture schedule also said it was in a grant.
That is,
Those were not,
that position is in ESSA 3. We had it in as a guidance administrative position, and then it was transferred to that assistant principal. We renamed it. I think the superintendent had spoken with the HR director, Mrs.
So-
Duncanson, about that.
so that was in there. So then the essentials coordinator that said grant next to it is not in there, plus the academic coach that you made the clarification on that was not included in ESSA, that's not there. So that's technically 2 positions then.
Think of them as one and the same, just renaming the position and making it. So think of the academic coach and the essentials coordinator as one and the same.
That's why I brought it up,
Yeah.
because it came off on one side, and then it came on another side under a different name with the grant next to it. And then the other paper had assistant or academic coach, and that was the one. So I think that was a big confusion to us all, and why I raised it, because I felt that Mrs. Coughlin and Mr. Masterson did do a good job of explaining the essentials coordinator and the role that would take and encompass, so it is more focused than the academic coach that we were somewhat losing.
At the last budget meeting, the actual positions that Mrs. Coughlin and I talked about was the dean position at North Cumberland and the add of school counseling. So we actually didn't personally talk about this scenario at the last budget meeting. I think that's also part of the clarification.
Yeah.
If the position were to be put in, it would be still a coaching position because that's the form and function of the job. We would just make it more myopic in focus as an essentials coordinator, you know, that type of position. And so during the last meeting, I'm positive came to the table to make that clarification, but I'm sorry if it wasn't as clear.
I'm just not sure that we have that the position, the budget position cuts and additions has been updated. That this document that we're looking at.
I'm not
So
sure what
that's the
Alex
that's where
updated
the
or not.
confusion lies, because we're looking, okay. Yeah, Mr. Collins.
I just have a question now. Since there's questions over funding for this position, how can we present the balanced budget to the town, not knowing where the money's going to come for this position? And that might be for the superintendent.
Nano said, if you put this back in, it would come out of breakage.
So this is a really important clarification and distinction. So what we're saying now, so Mr. DeMonico's motion to add this position, essentially, when he first made that motion, I was looking at this and thinking that this was an add in addition to the essentials coordinator. But now we've talked that out, and so now we know that the addition of this position would kind of be a hybrid essentials coordinator and academic coach. Okay, okay, okay. And it would come, you know, Mr. Vignano is recommending it comes out of breakage. That's how we would fund that, one position. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
I mean,
DeMonico.
this whole ordeal here could be mute come June if the superintendent has to, you know, present us a balanced budget that is not in line with what we're asking the town. So, but in the meantime, I'd like to see us put the position in and hope for the best.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the budget as Mr. DeMonica describes with the addition, I will call it the academic coach at McCourt. So and we have a second for discussion. Any other discussion related to this amendment?
I would just like Mr. Prignano to actually clarify the cost of the position and exactly how it's being added or subtracted from the breakage number. I'm sorry, can you use the microphone, please?
You're adding $95,000 or whatever to McCourt's budget, and you're going to take the breakage number and increase that from 430 to 525, so your bottom line will stay the same. So I would just, you know, I mean, if that's what you're going to do for ease, I would just use around $95,000 for both at this point.
Okay, any other discussion on this? So we have a motion and a second to amend the budget with the addition of the academic coach.
I'm assuming that Mr. DeMonico's motion includes taking the money to do that from breakage.
From breakage.
Yeah.
Yes, he did say that. So, yes, using breakage pay. Okay, so we'll take a vote on this now.
Madam Chair, may I just
Oh,
add
Mr.
one
DeMonico,
thing?
yes.
Dr. Masterson made a good point, so we just want to clarify, when the position originally existed, it was an academic coach at McCourt. The position would still, like I said, be a coaching type position with a more myopic focus, but because Essentials straddles both schools, we would get more out of that position, so it would go back and forth between both schools. So I just wanted to, but we also feel like having that more deeper focus, it could have a larger impact.
All right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion, oh, Ms. Smith?
This is the essentials coordinator, it's not the academic coach, is what I'm hearing. So it's just it's a verbiage,
It's a hybrid of the two.
right, and it was listed as essentials coordinator, and that's why, and take away the name of the academic coach, that's why I'm asking.
It could
Because
still be
we're voting on
considered,
a
an-
motion.
for the sake of the semantics, it can still be considered an academic coach. And then what the actual form and function is, we could change that anytime. It's just keep it academic coach, and then the actual description of the job will be a focus on essentials. So we can just get rid of the essentials coordinator term and keep it academic coach.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Do we need to vote again? Because I wasn't sure where we ended up. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, 7-0, to amend the budget, to add the academic coach, and to fund that from breakage. Now, if,
Madam Chair, I'll make a
Yes, Mr.
motion to
Collins.
approve the amended budget, the superintendent's amended budget.
thank you, Mr. Collins. So we have a motion and a second by Mr. Fiorello, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The budget is approved, 7-0. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. If anyone from the public would like to speak, you can come up to the microphone that's, I guess, in front of Mr. Devana, but we can move it. And please state your name and your address, and just know that there's a 3-minute time limit. Okay.
Allison Mudge. It's 4 Toby Ave in Pawtucket, but I'm a K teacher in town. Thank you for adding the KTAs back to the budget. This is my 10th year teaching kindergarten in Cumberland. With each passing year, the K staff from all 5 of the elementary schools has noticed K kids entering the buildings with increasing needs, whether they're social, emotional, behavioral, academic, medical. There's 7 of us here tonight, but I'm speaking on behalf of all 15 of us because we're all in agreement for the need to bring back the TAs that were cut a couple years ago when COVID first started. The TAs are an absolutely essential part of the education of our youngest students. If there's a perception that KTAs are only there to make copies or cut out materials, I would like to correct that. They help us, like I said, with behaviors, academics, the social emotional needs, learning needs, medical needs, bathroom issues, and so much more. Without them, the ones who suffer the most are our youngest students. The pandemic has made these already extremely needy students even needier. So without the help of the TAs, all the students struggle, both those who have the needs and those who don't, because we just don't have the support in place to provide help where it's needed or to challenge kids who need a little bit more of a challenge. And thank you, Mr. Fiorillo, for pointing out the classroom sizes. Our Ks have been maxed out for the past several years, so we have between 21 to 23 students, and without the additional adult to support us, it's extremely challenging to help meet everyone where they're at and give them the support that's needed. Thank you. Mic drop. Mic drop.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me now? Hi, I'm Lori Seno. I'm a lifelong resident of Cumberland. I've been teaching in Cumberland and early childhood classes for over 25 years. I'm currently a kindergarten teacher over at Ashton Elementary School. I really want to thank you for presenting a balanced budget. It is grueling. I totally understand how difficult it is. I've been to enough of these meetings to understand how difficult it is to put this budget together. I totally agree that yes, we need that academic coach up at McCourt. I absolutely agree that we need more counselors. And I just want you to be aware that as you're tweaking, if you have to tweak this budget, please, please, please do not take those kindergarten teaching assistants off. It has been an incredibly grueling 2 years. I have 24 students. I'm in my classroom all by myself. I get a teaching assistant 2 hours a week. The problems that we have seen from the pandemic range from bathrooming to social, emotional. Okay, so as you're tweaking your budget, please keep in mind that we absolutely need those kindergarten teaching assistants. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Chelsea Maldonado Morales, the longest name for the smallest teacher. I found Bonnie, or Bonnie found me rather, at URI. I started subbing for Cumberland immediately after graduation. I've subbed at all 5 elementary schools. I long-term sub with Fiscal Carter at Garvin, which is awesome, and I couldn't believe it when I landed a job at Cumberland Hill with Mrs. Malcolm, and it's been phenomenal. But if you counted that back right, all 3 of my teaching years have been affected by COVID. It was very difficult, but at Garvin and my first year at Cumberland Hill, I gotta say, my biggest mentors were the KTAs. Mrs. Kluznik at Garvin and Mrs. Mardo here, they had a wealth of knowledge and experience that really helped me out as a brand new teacher. They take a lot of pride in their jobs. They're phenomenal at it. They help differentiate because, like my fellow colleagues said, the needs are something I would have never expected. So it's really been phenomenal having them when we do have them, which unfortunately hasn't been a lot. So thank you so much for adding them back in there. I could not imagine doing this without them, and I have Mrs. Mardo for maybe an hour and a half a day. And that makes the world of a difference. So I just want to say thank you. Please don't ever get rid of them. We need them. They're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind giving your address too?
Oh,
just
yes,
for the record?
sorry. 870 Putnam Pike in Chepachet. I'm in
Okay.
the wood.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Fiorello. Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 6:36 PM. Thank you, everyone.